But in looking at what's special about Jesus, Peter, I think you claimed that his message of love thy neighbour as thyself with thy whole heart and thy whole soul, and love thy God with the whole heart and thy soul, of the neighbour of thyself for the love of God. But there was nothing special about that at all in relation to Jesus, because this was all in the Old Testament several times in the Old Testament.
Absolutely not. And it's in every single major religion in our world. Love your neighbour as yourself. Every single religion.
What's the big deal then about what did Jesus say?
The big deal is that Jesus says, love one another as I have loved you. And there we refer to Jesus' life, but also to his death, that the love that Jesus expected us to have for one another was a total self-sacrificing love, whereby as Jesus sacrificed everything for us, including what was most precious to him, his own life, so we are to live together, prepared to sacrifice everything that is most precious to us for the sake of our neighbours, for the sake of our brothers and sisters who are in need. The present inequalities that exist in our world and in Irish society are totally incompatible with the vision of Jesus and with the message of Jesus. The exclusion of people like homeless people and travellers and others who are excluded from Irish society are totally incompatible with the vision of Jesus and with the message of Jesus. So I think Jesus' command to love one another was live together in a community, live together with that radical self-sacrificing love so that everybody can live a proper human life as befits a child of God. Nobody is excluded, everybody is loved, reached out to, no matter who they are, no matter what society thinks about them. So I think the love that Jesus was talking about was a love that radically transforms the way we live together and would radically transform our world if we live together that way.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I agree with all those things you're saying, but I don't attribute them to Jesus.
Sure.
You know, I attribute them to just normal human ethics based on empathy and compassion and reciprocity. And I think that what religions do is they take these natural human instincts and add a supernatural dimension to them, which I don't think is necessary to enact them. And the thing that I find objectionable with the Jesus variation of that message is that it's accompanied by, you do this because you will get rewards in heaven, or you do this so that you will not get put into the unquenchable fire of hell. So I think those messages that you're talking about are much stronger when they're done just by virtue of wanting to minimize the suffering of other sentient beings and to maximize the well-being of other sentient beings, rather than by adding in
absolutely
rewards and punishments.
I absolutely agree with you, and I think to understand the message of Jesus and the person of Jesus, we have to start taking away a lot of the layers of understanding that have accumulated, and one of them is this thing about heaven and hell. Jesus hadn't the slightest interest in getting people into heaven or saving people from hell. Jesus was interested in how we live together here on earth in order to be faithful to God.
Peter, the whole story that we were told growing up, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this program will have heard this in their lifetime, but the whole point of Jesus was, here God, so upset at the sinfulness of humankind, upset primarily because of humankind's indifference to himself, this conceited God, in order to make reparations to himself, sent his only begotten Son into the world to be tortured and murdered so that he'll feel better.
If that is the understanding of God's intention and the understanding of who Jesus was, I don't want anything to do with it.
Okay, but you acknowledge that this was what Catholicism meant for an awful lot of people over many centuries.
I absolutely acknowledge that, and I think we've got to get rid of that.
A very distorted version of it, which I think, may have its roots earlier than that, but certainly found this classic formulation of the Council of Trent in the 16th century, and which arrived to Turin, where I grew up, in the little penny catechism. So yeah, I agree with that. But what I think what has happened in recent theological reflection is to go back to the biblical stories and to try to understand the biblical story historically, first of all, and then also, I think, in terms of its context. So I think context is very important. One point I would like to add to what Peter was saying is this, that Jesus said, love your enemies, not just love your neighbour. Love your enemy. That has not been found in any ancient philosophical text or other religious text. Love your enemy. Now that's an extraordinary statement that should be said.
It has actually. There's a lot of Greek philosophy and going back as far as Confucius and people like that. The idea of resisting anger with kindness is way predates Christianity or Jesus or even Judaism. These are human evolutionary developments in terms of empathy and compassion. And just as a kind of reality check, you see, one of the difficulties I have with these conversations, you kind of get, from an atheist perspective, is you kind of get sucked into forgetting that we're assuming that a God exists. Whereas if you don't start by believing that a God exists, a lot of these concepts are a little bit strange.
Well, no, I think that's right, and I think your emphasis on human ethics is human before it is Christian, or indeed before it's religious.